What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Unplugged Nation Podcast. And today we have our good friend Dan Jones on the channel. Let me bring him up. Here we go. Hello, good sir.
Hi,
Hello.
good to be here.
Yeah, man. It was good. It's good to have you. I know that for those of you guys that don't know, which you all should know, is that this man right here, this legend, helps hundreds of thousands of people. I was just gonna say to help fall asleep and also to take their mind off their current, their current situations. It's a good step away, man. And I applaud you for carving out your niche. I would love for you to introduce what you do, like in a nutshell, to our listeners, our viewers.
I actually wanted to set up a channel called that, Dan Jones in a Nutshell. All I had was the idea of the banner of me curled up inside a nutshell as the banner. And I thought,
Yeah.
I have to create a channel just so I can create the banner. Never did it because I don't know what I put on the channel. Probably just about me. But yeah, I've been around for a very, very, very long time on YouTube. I've been around since 2007.
Wow.
So ages and ages running my channel, which has changed its name subtly over time. I changed it back similar to what it was originally when I approached 100,000 subscribers, because one of the goals obviously back then was that I wanted the play button to have my channel name on it.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wanted the original channel name or close to it. So I've evolved over time. So it's Dan Jones Hypnosis, Meditations and Stories. Initially, it was just Dan Jones Hypnosis that I, for a very, very long time, since maybe 2003, 2004, I've been posting on the internet, hypnosis stuff, meditation stuff, both for people to use for self-help reasons, but also training. So I'm a hypnotherapy trainer. And when I started out doing hypnosis in the 1990s, because I'm pretty old, there was no way of accessing all this information. Everything was behind these paywalls. Like the courses were thousands and thousands of pounds. And it's like, I want to know this subject. I either have to buy one of the cheap, like $5.99 self-hypnosis books that tells you pretty much nothing, or pay like £5,000 to take a course. Where's the in-between bit? Where's the bit where it's like, I don't know the subject enough to spend £5,000. I want to know a bit. So once the internet came about, one of the first things I saw was the potential for sharing information for free, saying, look, just dip your toe in, try it out, learn a bit about it. Because I learned, for example, that it isn't what I thought it was. So I got into hypnosis for all the wrong reasons. I'm autistic, and I didn't know that really 100%. I was diagnosed as an adult, so I didn't 100% know that I was autistic. But I was autistic growing up, and one of my big problems is social communication and wanting to kind of have everything clear and patterns for everything. And like, I just need to know where I am. Don't sort of be really vague with me. Just bluntly tell me what you want me to do, how you want me to do it. Yeah, don't sort of beat around the bush. Don't try not to offend me. And so you don't tell me the truth because you're trying not to offend me. But now I've got no idea what I'm supposed to do because you're trying not to offend me. And so I'm going to annoy you more.
There's no direction. Now in like this world, everything's so much more vague.
Yeah.
Because everyone tries not to be direct. And it's
So that's kind of where I started. In the 1990s, there's a famous UK hypnotist called Paul McKenna. And he had a Paul McKenna's stage show on TV back in the 1990s. And I watched it and I thought, this hypnosis thing where he's clicking his fingers and then people are kind of zonking out and drooling. And then he says, when you open your eyes, you're going to do whatever I tell you. And then they do. So that's going to make school life so much easier. If I can learn this skill, teachers, do what I want. Students, do what I want. I've got to learn this. So that was literally how it's portrayed from stage shows and films and things like that. It looks like you've got this massive power if you can learn it. So that's how I got into it, that I wanted to know how to do this thing. But everything that teaches how to actually do it is behind a massive paywall, and everything available is rubbish. So it's like sort of, here's a self-hypnosis script, and it's just like, you will not smoke ever again. And it's complete rubbish. So there was nothing in between. So I got into it for the wrong reasons, and then I learned, oh, it's not what I thought. And that's because of Paul McKenna again. Paul McKenna did a documentary. So because he became so well known in the UK for his TV stage show, they obviously had him do a hypnosis documentary, like what is hypnosis type documentary. And so I watched that, and part of it is you're not allowed to show hypnosis, how to do hypnosis on British TV. There's a law against it. So even though you can on, nowadays, it's a pointless law because you can on YouTube and literally everywhere else. So if someone wants to see it, it's like, I'll just stop watching your TV then, and I'll go and watch it on YouTube. YouTube can do anything, pretty much.
Within reason. Yeah.
So I watched this documentary, and it got to the point where Paul's saying, I'm going to show you how to do hypnosis. And he wasn't doing it. He was letting another hypnotist do the hypnosis, but he was doing the voiceover. And he said, I will tell you, we can't show it. So we can't like have the volume on. So I'll tell you what the hypnotist is doing. And then he went on to say the hypnotist is looking for the breathing slowing down to show the person's relaxing, the cheeks going red to show the person's relaxing, and blood flows flowing to the cheeks.
Yeah.
I didn't know you had non-verbal communication. I don't get taught in school that people have non-verbal communication. Where's this weird non-verbal communication thing coming from? As I grew up, I learned that apparently you're supposed to figure this out naturally as you grow up. It's supposed to be something you just naturally...
By trial and error.
Yeah, naturally, people are supposed to figure out that people have non-verbal communication. But autistic people struggle with reading and understanding and recognizing non-verbal communication. So I just didn't even know it existed. People always say, look at me when I'm talking to you. And then there's Paul McKenna saying a hypnotic technique is to look at someone when you're talking to them, and it fixes their attention. And if you hold that gaze, they go into a trance. They go into sort of a really narrow focused attention where depending on the context, it could feel like a loving thing and evoke feelings of butterflies in the stomach and love. If it's a threatening context, exactly the same behavior can lead to feelings like this person's intimidating me and threatening me or whatever. So it changes, the response changes depending on the context. But it was like, so you're telling me that looking at people is a hypnotic technique, but everyone around me is saying, look at me when I talk to you. I don't get this, because if everyone's looking at everyone, are they not just all doing hypnosis all the time?
Yeah.
So hypnosis, learning about hypnosis taught me that it's all just about communication skills. And so I found this fascinating, but everything's behind a paywall. So once the internet came along, it was like, I want to be the person who removes the paywall and says, look, I've got these platforms that people are making available. Like in those days, it was Google Video, not YouTube. That wasn't around. I used Stickam, which was a like webinar platform. I used Stickam for doing webinars and things that was free for me to use. And my best friend worked at a mobile phone company, which was the first UK mobile phone company to have like unlimited data. And as a member of staff, he had unlimited data for specifically for streaming videos and things. So we would run courses and use his mobile data to stream the courses onto the internet, where we could take questions live on his mobile phone, and obviously then answer those questions as well as demonstrating and interacting with an audience in the room. But I was doing all this stuff for free, and then obviously MySpace came about, and I was on MySpace posting 20-minute videos on there and all the audio on there. And then I was on Facebook and posting all the stuff on there. And then it was like, there's this YouTube thing. So I started posting on YouTube. I think I signed up in 2006 and set my channel up, started posting January 2007, and was initially posting maybe 5-10 times a day. Every time I had an idea for something, like, I'm posting that. Complete rubbish. Done most of it filmed on a mobile phone that was like 240 pixels. It was literally not viewable nowadays. You watch it nowadays and think, I don't remember it looking that bad. How did it look that bad? It's like watching TV from the 90s. I don't remember in the 90s TV looking as bad as that. So so I was uploading all this stuff. Started YouTube because of all that, because I wanted to. I was teaching hypnotherapy, and I was doing all this stuff kind of in my sort of out of YouTube life. I also had started working, so I wasn't making enough money to do anything like that self-employed full-time. So I was working full-time and doing all this stuff part-time, self-employed.
Man.
And so I was working in the care industry. I'd started in mental health and then moved into working in children's homes. And in children's homes, that's when I really started doing storytelling.
Okay.
So a lot of the kids had, so the kids I'd worked with were from about 5 years old up to 18. And then before they hit their 19th birthday, they had to move out of the home. So it was multiple homes. So the age range between any home was about 4 or 5 years, depending on which end of the age range it was. So these kids had come from really difficult backgrounds. Many of them had really bad associations with bedrooms and with trying to sleep at night and settle at night. They're also now in a children's home. So not only have many of them been abused and all sorts of stuff that gives them bad associations, they're in a home full of strangers with staff who can't hug them or do anything loving and show the kind of parental love, who they obviously are suspicious of and thinking you're only doing this job because you're getting paid, which obviously for some people that is genuinely the case. And for others, they're doing it more as a vocational thing that they love caring and they want to do it for caring reasons. And unfortunately, there's also some, because of the type of job it is, who are in it for entirely the wrong reasons because they see these vulnerable people they can abuse. So unfortunately, that exists as well, like any kind of job like that. But I was doing that job and the kids would want me, this is like 2000, I started doing that kind of work. Kids would want me to tell stories at bedtime to help settle them. At that time, the big thing was Lord of the Rings. So often they'd want me to read The Hobbit, which luckily is much smaller than Lord of the Rings. So every night I'd read a bit of The Hobbit to them, and I'd read it in my way. And because of all my hypnosis training, even back then, any time I saw an opportunity like going into a mountain, I would start changing my voice to kind of imply relaxation and going deeper into something. And I'd add in extra words like, they went deeper into the mountain. I'd just add in the word deeper, even if it's not written, just because it just adds that little extra emphasis. And I time the reading with their breathing so that as I'm saying things, I'm reading when they're breathing out, because breathing out triggers the relaxation response. And so if I say things on their out breath, they follow my lead and start building rapport with it. So I was doing all this sort of stuff, and I would, there was other techniques that we would do, like, you could stroke on someone's arm in time with their breathing, and then just make the downstrokes slightly longer than the upstrokes, and their breathing would then match with it, and they'd sort of go, and they would kind of go with it. So I was doing these sort of techniques and very effectively getting kids to sleep very quickly. But then kids would want other stories, and so I would just then create them. It'd be like, what are you interested in? Just give me a bunch of ideas, things you'd like me to make a story out of. In fact, I saw Harry Mack for the very first time. Someone reacting, because I watch reaction videos, someone reacting to Harry Mack doing his Omegle thing. And it was the first time I'd heard of him, but never seen him. And I saw that he was doing the thing of give me 3 words and I'll create a rap out of it. And I was thinking, that's what I do with storytelling.
That's awesome.
Give me a bunch of words and I'll just turn it into a story. So that was the first time I'd seen someone else doing something similar to me, but in a different arena. But yeah, so I was doing that and doing it with children and teenagers, just sort of create stories for them in my own way. So it had to be low tension, low conflict, and using curiosity rather than conflict as being the driver for the story. So you engage the listener in something curious is happening. You've discovered a pen and you want to know what that pen's for. You're scribbling maybe notes down on a bit of paper, and suddenly this ink is coming out weird and it seems to be forming into something magical, and it seems to be writing a message, and you're curious what this message is that's appearing before you on the paper. And so you'd figure out ways of using curiosity and wonder to drive the story forward, instead of this bad thing happened and they had to then overcome this challenge, which most stories that you find at some point, the driving force is the sort of hero's journey of something happens and the person has to take action now to try and have that call to action and do something.
Like the obstacle part of any story, like the build up to the obstacle, overcoming the obstacle.
And the difficulty with an obstacle in relation to sleep stories to do with trying to calm someone's mind. Unfortunately, I get a lot of comments on my videos saying, you're my go-to person when nothing else works. So, can't I be your go-to person at the beginning?
Not just, right?
I've been listening. I listen to all these other stories, but once it doesn't work, I go to you.
Like,
Yeah, but if you
what?
have that much faith in mine, go to me first. I want the views.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
funny.
watch
I mean,
everyone else's as well, but I'd like
it's
the
not,
views.
it's not funny, but I understand, like, because I mean, I would say recently, I got into in this future that we live in, right? Um, I've exhausted the normal run of the mill bedtime stories to tell my son, right?
Mm,
And I try to get him in bed, and he's like, "Daddy, tell me a story." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I've already told him all of your traditional stories. I've already retold the classics of Jurassic Park, Jaws in kid form.
mm, mm,
Apollo 13, anything. I'm just pulling and just generalizing these stories. And then that's when this Chat GPT thing kicked off.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that at least helps me zero in.
Mm,
Zero in on a very generic, vague, keep it open. That way, for me, the mind can wander, or the
mm, mm,
parent can piggyback on that idea
mm,
and make it their own. You can expand because the
mm.
my stories are very vague, don't make sense. But
Yep.
that's
Mine are very much like that. They've often been described as, and now you've been, obviously, you react to a lot of British stuff, you'll get the references. They've often been described as very much in the vein of Lewis Carroll, kind of Alice in Wonderland type stuff, and Monty Python. But literally, you'll be, running to the top of a tower and a spaceship rescues you. That
yep,
kind of stuff. It's like,
Life of
hang on,
Brian stuff.
medieval, running to the top of a tower, and you're in a spaceship with aliens having a space battle, and then you end up back down where you started, and it's like,
What?
yeah, and that's what my stories do. So,
Yep.
and I struggle to create stories. Just so when I so initially I didn't go for storytelling being my focus of my channel.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I've kind of mentioned, it was all share knowledge. And I still love sharing knowledge. That's, I've got plenty of books behind me to show that. I love sharing knowledge. I love learning stuff. And then I love telling everyone about what I've learned and exploring possibilities with it. So stuff that's like, haven't thought of doing it in that way, or how can that inspire me to think of this in this way, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of what I was doing. But one thing in terms of helping people is obviously people struggle with sleep and people struggle with mental health, things like anxiety,
Yep.
depression, etc. So I was making sleep stories as a soft way because people are more. So there was a therapist who did an interview with me, and he, during the course that he was running at the time, he went into the little shop around the corner from the university he was teaching in. And he was saying, I was in this shop and this person pushed in. And he ended up telling this story to this person who pushed in as a way of being able to insult the person. So he got to the point where he's telling this individual in the queue who'd pushed in front of him. And I told this person, you're a complete bastard for pushing. And he just ended up having to go at this person. But he said it as part of the story. So the person didn't know, are you insulting me? Or are you saying that this is what you did to someone else? So I use stories for the same reason, not to insult people, but to put therapy into someone's mind where they're not trying to resist. So if you were anxious about
Exactly.
something and I
Exactly.
just came up to you and said, wow, have you not thought about doing this? Duh, of course I've thought about doing that. Don't be so patronizing. But if I tell a story about something, like say, so what I do in therapy is if you said, I just feel like I'm stuck in a rut, my channel doesn't seem to be going anywhere, I just seem to be going around like I'm on a hamster wheel, you're using metaphors without knowing you're using metaphors because that's what humans do. So I might then tell a story about someone getting stuck in a rut on a country road and how they figured out how to get out of that rut. And then I might carry on the story with them getting home, feeding the hamster running on the wheel, then the hamster going and doing something else. And so I give the answers in the story metaphorically so that you can then take the metaphors, the patterns, because all I've done is taken the patterns. You can take the patterns unconsciously and apply them to your life and find your own solution without me telling you what it is. So that's what I was doing on YouTube. I was just creating these stories that were entirely therapeutic. And then people started liking them more than my other content.
I like
and
that.
So my channel had to change if I wanted to keep doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't start out doing that sort of thing. Back when in 2007, I was doing vlogging. I'd never heard of these terms back then, but I was doing vlogging. I'd walk around
Yeah.
my mobile phone. I'd have an idea and I'd be out and about walking around country roads, and I'd be like, I'm just going to talk to my phone, my 240 pixel phone. I'd be sharing therapy things like, oh yeah, I've helped this person deal with their snoring partner by walking around with a headphone in with music they hate, like heavy metal music, blaring into their ear at an uncomfortable volume for a whole day, because then that teaches them to drown out, be able to instinctively and unconsciously learn to drown out a noise they hate. So I'd set that as a task, and the person would think this is a horrible task, but if they do it, they learn to drown out the noise. Just like someone who works on a building site will learn to drown out the noise.
Yep.
So you get used to then, my brain knows how to do it. It just has to now work out how to do it in a different context, like with
Correct.
the snorer at night. So I would sort of share all this kind of random rubbish in 2-3 minute long videos on YouTube. And I was doing things like unboxings. So it'd be like, I've bought this new thing. I'm going to show it. And so I was doing that in like 2007.
You were doing everything. You were doing everything.
I just saw it as I want to share stuff. And and then I was also sharing stuff around, how to do hypnosis, how to do therapy, all this kind of stuff. Then I started facing a lot of trolling from the therapy community. Yeah. So there's a lot of hypnotherapy, very famous hypnotherapy trainers who started attacking me and getting their students to attack me, and who even contacted me and said, why on earth would people come on my £3,000-4,000 training course if you're giving away our secrets for free? And
oh man,
my thing was, if they want the qualification, they'll come to you. If they just want to know what this is about, watch the free video. It doesn't take away from you and what you're doing. And now all these people have ended up going through the process of trying YouTube, not having the motivation to stick at it, which is the biggest problem, in my opinion, with a lot of YouTubers. People that want to do it, they quit because you definitely don't normally, unless you're an outlier, you don't normally see massive results rapidly. No. That think, I can quit my job now. It's 3 weeks into my YouTube career.
Nope, it is a grind.
Yeah. So
to say the least.
A lot of people do that, and so but these people hadn't even started. This was new technology for them, and for me, it was like, this is just what I want to do. I used to do therapy in Facebook in PS3s at home. So PS3 had the at home thing. Yeah. Where you could buy your own little apartment and you could invite people to your apartment. So I would have an apartment on my PS3, invite people to therapy, to sit on a virtual couch in my home, PS3 home, in the at home on PS3. I used to love it and do it there.
So so here, I have a couple things. Like, so you've been, I love this. You're tapped into the human condition to like a different level that normally people just overlook. Like, it's there. And let me just bring it back to what you said before. I love the idea that you develop characters that people can associate themselves with and become and receive therapy unbeknownst to them, but as their character. So it's like their guard is already lowered, because once you go, let's say you have to go to therapy, then my guard is already up. You're already playing mind games with me. I already don't trust you. But if I'm listening to a story, I
probably will already be playing mind games with you.
Yeah. And so just from that, I like that idea. I like you, because everyone, since you're a kid, has that. You are looking for this fantastical world of escape. You're looking for this alternate reality. And when someone gives you a story that's about you, that you can find yourself plugged into, you can accept more things as that character than you could if they were talking directly at you.
In a story, so coming back to your point of vagueness, I try to be as unintrusive as possible with my storytelling. So it kind of varies. There's a kind of range of that. So sometimes I want to tell a specific story, so I'm going to be a bit more specific. But generally, for example, if I say to you, and so there's also two different types of stories. The type which, if you were writing it, you'd call it second person, but I always call it first person, because I think of it as I'm a gamer, so I think of it as it's your experience. You are going through a first person experience while you listen to it. So there's that type of story where I'm guiding you through an experience where you are the character. So I will describe it as, you now do this and you now do that. Then there's the other type of story where I may say, Johnny, Alex, a woman, a man, whatever. There's a
third
character
party, like a
to it, and
third
it's third
party.
person.
Yeah.
And both have their place and both work for different reasons. First person, if you're going through it, it's more personal. But I also want to not mismatch. So if I say you find yourself walking out onto a beach, because I've not specified the beach, I will not now say there's storm clouds, it's a rough sea, it's a sandy beach, because I don't know that. You're thinking it in your head. And because I didn't specify it beforehand to put the idea into it. So if I said, and in a moment you end up finding yourself walking onto a beautiful sandy beach, and then you do it, I've put the idea there, now you would discover it. So if I want something specific, I have the person discover it at some point. If I don't care whether it's specific, if I think, no, you have your experience. So if you want a beach that's, thunderstorm on the horizon, dark clouds, crashing waves onto the shore, rocks poking out into the sea, if that's what you love, have that as your beach when I say, and you walk out onto a beach. I'm not going to dictate to you what the beach is. What I'll do instead is say, and I wonder what the sky looks like. And then I pause for a moment to give them an opportunity to look. And I wonder what it feels like to be walking on that ground. And I draw their attention to elements of the story without dictating what those elements are, so that they discover it for themselves. So I'm vague instead of being specific. And if I'm going to be specific, so say I want a stream in woodland. So I'm talking about being in woodland. I'm talking about what it feels like as you brush past the trees and you touch the bark of the trees, and I get into all the sensory stuff because I'm trying to engage you in it. And I wonder when you notice the distant sound of that stream. I'm just offering it out there. And then at some point, maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes into the story, beyond that point, you'll arrive at the stream and I'll start talking about how you're arriving at the stream. But you expect to find it now because I've already planted the idea. Whereas third person stories, I don't necessarily do that. It's like so-and-so goes into this situation. I try and do that to some extent, though, because I want you to have I kind of think in your head, I just want you to have the story you have, which may be different to the story someone else has. And so I try and be vague enough.
Gotcha.
But stories do offer you that opportunity to, for example, you meet a wise wizard. You can now say what the wise wizard is going to say. And that wise wizard can say wise words the person needs to hear. But the wise wizard isn't saying it to the person who sat in the room, in their bed or, falling asleep. They're saying it to whoever the character is. Even if the character is them, they're saying it to the character, not to them. So they don't put a barrier up to it. Unless it's too extreme and it sounds preachy or something like that. They don't put a barrier up to it. They just accept it. So this wise wizard gives them some wise words and they just take it in as it's part of the story. They don't think any more of it, but it's really deeply therapeutic for them.
It's definitely more immersive, like either way, but having them paint their own scene is like an investment. Like now they're part of the story because they've created the background. Even though my woods and their woods are completely different, we're still painting that. We still Bob Ross the background. We're there. And I really love that tactic. I really do. That's something that's super. For me, English, the like literature English path throughout schooling was I hated it. My English teacher, my English curriculum would break down books and stuff and ruin them for me. Just because why can't this book just be about the dude that finds something and leave it there? It wasn't until I got a lot older.
Famous psychiatrist who I really like, a guy called Milton Erickson. He's a US psychiatrist from Arizona. He died in 1980. And there's so much I could say about him. But one thing he said was the quickest way to fall out of love is to start analyzing the relationship. Once you start analyzing what you like and dislike about someone, that's when you start noticing it all and you fall out of love with the person. You think, oh, I didn't realize they were that bad. So don't go analyzing things. So he would have that kind of thing of, not going and searching for all of these bits and pieces that may ruin things for you. And
yes, And I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like artwork. Artwork is subjective. An art form is subjective. Like it's art to you. You make it because it's a piece of you, a piece of your creativity, and it's hopefully helping you achieve what you want to achieve.
Mm.
Whether people buy into it, that's on them to decide. You
Well, it's
know,
a bit like, obviously, with any creative thing. There's a film that I really, really love that I'm imagining most people have probably either never heard of, and even if they have, probably think, no, that's a stupid film, I don't like it, called Evil Ed. And
which was
it's
I've never heard
about a
of it.
film editor, a
Uh-huh.
horror film editor. And back in the late 90s, myself and my best friend, he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. We used to do everything together. He bought, we rented back. That's how long ago it was. We
Wow.
rented it from
Yeah.
a video shop on video. And the first time we watched it, we laughed so much before the title started that the film ended and we hadn't yet stopped laughing. And three
Okay.
times in a row, this is in the old days, so you had to actually rewind the cassette tape, the videotape. 3 times in a row, we didn't manage to stop laughing about the intro to the film before that happens before the title rolls.
Oh my God, I gotta.
And
What is it called?
Evil Ed.
Evil Ed. All right.
And so it's one of those films that it is stupid, but when you talk about sort of artwork being subjective and people love it or hate it or whatever, it's stupid. But my best friend and myself, the person I was going out with at the time, she was asleep at the time. We're both sat. So I lived in a really, really tiny studio flat at the time. So we're both sat on the end of the bed. She's sleeping in the bed. We then creased up laughing. She then woke up and said, "It feels like there's vibrators in all 4 corners of this bed. Can you stop laughing, please?" That just obviously made us laugh even more.
Yeah.
But literally, we just couldn't stop laughing about this thing. And it's just one of those films that I find ridiculously funny. Even now, I've got a copy of it. Once it came out on DVD, I bought a copy of it. So I've got a copy. I think I've got it digitally as well. I've got a copy of it, and I find it hysterically funny. In terms of art, I don't think most other people would. And I don't think most people would find the bit that happens before the title comes up particularly funny. Not to the point where you can laugh for 90 minutes straight just because of what happens in the first 3 minutes of a film.
Listen, that similar experience happened to me when I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I laughed so hard because of the beginning of the movie and the subtitles that were going on. You know, and I was like, okay, this is different. It's all different. Like everything I know about your classical how a movie should go is throw that away and let's just experience the new style of film. And it was my history teacher that introduced me to Monty Python. And from that moment, it's like I don't know whether it hinged on I grasped on the moment of just being young, being in school, learning, and associating that feeling to Monty Python and like being open to that new style of movie. But it's funny how a lot of people that were my classmates thought it was a ridiculous movie. It was like not even watchable, you know. And it that's what it is. That's what art is. That's what a movie is. Like,
and I get that with my stories. I've had stories where, like, one story I think from 2019 or so was a horse and a magic mushroom. Because the idea is I was coming up with all my stories via live streams. So I would just say to the chat, throw out words just anything, like a word or a short phrase. So don't give me like an entire thing of I want your story to be all this. Just throw out word or a short phrase of something you'd like in the story. And people threw out things like magic mushrooms and horses, and also so horse taking magic mushrooms has a big trip.
There you go.
Make a story out of that. And so, yeah, in real time. So all I do is once I've got the whole list, I would then have a sip of water and say, right, I'm going to do it now. And then I'll just record it live on air. I'd record it sort of in a proper microphone into a proper audio thing, which is better audio than what they're receiving on the live stream. Because I made sure it never went through. I was using a really bad computer. So I'd make sure it didn't run through the computer.
Got it.
The recording, the audio part, because I wanted to have as little running on the computer so the live stream doesn't crash.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I got you on that.
So I obviously am creating this story where it's about a horse who ends up eating these mushrooms, having this trip, ending up finding themselves like time traveling in their mind, and they go to the future, they find themselves in a city, they then go to some other place to find themselves, and literally people just say that's literally like being on an acid trip. Like, well, yeah, Monty Python. It's
Yeah.
so some people really don't resonate with the stories I create. Someone, in another live stream, someone said pilot fish. They wanted me to include pilot fish. So instead of including pilot fish as in a pilot fish, an actual fish, I thought a fish piloting a plane.
There you
So
go.
now all of a sudden, I've got a story with a fish piloting a plane. Someone suggested jellyfish. So I had, because there's a fish piloting a plane, obviously they're not under the water. So the jellyfish were floating in the air and having to deal with these floating jellyfish. And then just weird stuff happens. And to me, that's what kept it and keeps everything I do on my channel fresh, because it's give me a completely random list of words, because then I don't even know where the story's going. And the trick is, how do I link these words? So I don't necessarily use every single word that's suggested, but how do I link a narrative through these words? And that way I know I'm not going to be making the story like I made last week or like I made the week before, where it gets stale. It's like, I don't even know what idea to come up with.
Yes.
I don't know what the words are going to be. So every story will be totally different. And it could be, I've had stories where a rose turns into a tree that leads to a dragon, or where I think back to back 2 weeks running, people suggested rose. And then another rose one was a rose on a love story, like a long lost love, like an elderly woman who'd lost her husband years earlier kind of story, where the rose was on a bench, because these were the words given to me. So that one had a rose on a bench, and that they pick it up and they have
like
a
rose
contemplative
theme.
moment.
You have a strong rose theme.
Yeah, so it just went through a stage where that's what people were giving me in the live streams. And I would just take all these words and think, just the thing you like about things like Alice in Wonderland and through Alice Through the Looking Glass and things like, is the weird kind of Alice walks to a rabbit hole. Somehow she manages to fit in the rabbit hole, shrink down even further, drinks a drink, changes size even smaller, gets through a door that's even smaller, meets a bunch of people who act as playing cards, meets a cat that's invisible 1 minute and, visible the next minute, who's a bit cheeky. And it's like, this is all weird, wild stuff. And then obviously inspired by Monty Python, that is all weird, wild stuff. Monsters chasing them, and then the artist drops down dead.
But you ask so there's no more monster. You ask a lot less questions when it is vague right out of the gate. When it is kind of abstract and vague, you don't ask questions. Like, no one's ever asked, like, what was that tea? Where did she get the tea from? Who brewed that tea? Where did she buy the tea? No, it's like, it's so ridiculous. You're like, got the tea, shrank, and that we accept that.
Well, I do get some of those comments though. So I did a story where the story started. Obviously, this just comes with YouTube, but I did a story where a story started. The suggestions led me to doing a story where a person was looking from the woods out at like some mountains in like Alaska or somewhere, and the northern lights were there, and polar bears. There's a mum polar bear and a cub polar bear, and the mum polar bear absorbed the northern lights into their body and then radiated these northern lights, pulsing. So I thought it'd be really good imagery if you're falling asleep to it, pulsing these northern lights, and some magic stuff happened. Someone commented, polar bears don't exist when northern lights exist. They're asleep in hibernation. So that's the bit of the story you had a problem with? I've never seen a polar bear absorb the northern lights. The bit you've got a problem with is that polar bears should be hibernating at the time. And all these animals bears in the story. I love
that. All the polar bears becoming fucking disco balls. Like just
So I do get some comments like that where people take certain bits totally literally, where they'll quote some physics at me or something. It's like, did you not get the rest of the story? It's physics goes out the window. It's a story. It's supposed to be like a dream world. I think of it as like a dream world. When you dream, everything makes sense. Never mind how stupid it is when you try and tell someone the next day, and you suddenly think it through and think, that's stupid. But at the time, it seems perfectly acceptable. Never mind how strange it is. And I think, why not give bedtime stories that give a dreamlike quality to them?
There's something that has been lost, and I feel like, let me get on a little soapbox here. It's because the world's knowledge is at our fingertips, there is less room now for imagination.
Mm.
Imagination can't just go wild like it used to. Like when I was a kid growing up, there was no social media. I had to click the dial on my TV, and most of the time I was like, "F this! It's all blurry anyway.
Yep,
I'm just
I
gonna
used to have
go."
the black and white set with the
Yep.
twisty dial and my other arm holding an aerial up,
It's
stretching.
like,
I'll get some signal somehow, twisting a dial with one hand, wave it.
yeah,
Right, I've got it. I can't move. Got to stay like
yeah,
this for the next hour because I want to
yeah.
watch this program.
And then you
Just
would just
hold it.
get bored of that, so you go
Mm,
outside and make actual memories.
mm.
And you would use and you'd use your imagination. Me being an only child, that my imagination and reading was my escape. It's kind of ethereal. I'm just like summoning the powers of the. Sorry, I have a lot of hats. But no. So it's just I feel like there's just a lack of imagination. There's a lack of promoting imagination
Mm,
now because everything is it's so easily to debunk. Like
mm.
you're like, okay, let me go on a boat and go into space. Boats can't go into space. Why? Because space doesn't have oxygen. Well, okay, well, bro, I'm like 3 years old. Like, let me dream,
Mm.
kind of thing. And it's just you have those people out there, especially over here on YouTube, um, that are quick to shoot down. That I don't know what
Mm.
happened. It's obviously not their story. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's
Mm.
not for them. They can choose not to comment, not even to
Mm.
listen.
Yeah,
And
that
that's
is
what
always
I
the
do.
weird one. I'm unsubscribing. Well,
Oh,
thanks
okay.
for the comment because that's helped me, but
Yeah.
you didn't have to announce it to me. And
Yeah.
actually, I can see that it says you're still subscribed. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It,
but yeah, feel free to say that. So anything like that. So obviously, as I say, I've been on YouTube for a ridiculously long time. I stopped in 2011 because of the trolling from my own community. It got so bad, my best friend gave up doing hypnotherapy and everything. He said, if this is what the caring community is
wow.
like, I don't want to be a part of this community. This is supposed to be the caring community.
Yep.
And they're literally attacking us. And someone set up a fake Wikipedia page of me to slag me off as a
What?
trainer and all sorts of stuff. And at the time, I was doing YouTube for free. It was just something I was doing. I wasn't doing
Yeah.
it thinking of monetization or anything. I'd got some books out and I was doing a full-time job, and it was just something I was doing maybe 20 or 30 hours a week, but it was around my work, and it was just something that I love sharing knowledge, and I love helping people and trying to
Yeah.
stimulate thinking and stuff. So I was just sharing stuff, and it was like, do I have to do all this for free for abuse? Whereas
Yeah.
when I lost my job in 2015,
Mhm.
I was doing a caring job. I was facing workplace discrimination and abuse. That led me to then seeking an autism diagnosis because it was going to be the only way to access occupational health, which would mean that the occupational health team would then say to my manager, who was the one doing the bullying, who said things like, do you have something mentally wrong with you? And would just be constantly attacking me. And I thought, well, if I've got occupational health on my side, they can tell you what you can and can't say. But I have to have a diagnosis for that. As it turned out, I lost my job before I got the diagnosis.
Oh my God.
But I lost the job through being made redundant. So it meant I got a bit of a cash lump sum. And at the time, I felt very trapped. Before I got to that point, I felt very trapped because the job was paying me enough money. It was paying me I was doing a job that's very niche, doing
Okay.
caring work, working with families
Got
with
it.
severe challenges. And they were the only employer of that type of work. So it wasn't like I could just
Wow.
leave and go to another job.
Okay.
And because that's literally my only skill, I did terrible in school at most subjects. I did terrible at English and things. And yet I've sold like 150,000 books. So don't need to
Awesome,
be in
man.
it. Don't need an English qualification to do that. You can just work hard. So I was sort of facing this discrimination and felt really trapped because it was either minimum wage jobs or that job. And the minimum wage jobs
Wow.
wouldn't cover my bills. And so it was that job. And so that led me to being I sort of became suicidal because of it. And then I was told, we're getting rid of your position. And I then argued and said, I've been here long enough that you have to offer me redundancy. You have to pay me off to leave. And so they said, okay, we've checked with our legal department. You're correct. We have to pay you to leave. or we can say, well, you can stay in a different job, but a lower paid job. So it's like, no, I'll take the money and run. Thanks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they said, do you want to think about it? We'll give you 6 months to
You're
think
like,
about it. I said,
nope.
I'll take the money and run.
Yeah.
I'll have the 6 months to save some money as well as that money, but I'm still going to take the money and run. So I took that money, and that was enough money I'd worked out it could pay me for 6 months making no income. So in that 6 months in 2015, I thought, I have to now be making a living. So I thought, what do I have going for me? I've got a number of books I've written. They're not making a lot of money because I don't do anything beyond I've released it, now I'm on to the next thing. But I could probably try and push them a little bit. I thought I've created like 15 courses, so maybe I can push my e-courses a bit more. So I had some foundations there. I had YouTube channel that I'd been off of since 2011, but I still had a YouTube channel sitting there. So I'd posted the odd video, but it was just like, where you just post kind of, I went to the woods today. So
where you just park a video.
Yeah. So I didn't really do anything else with it. And so that became my plan. 2015, I will make a success of all this as a digital content creator. And by end of 2016, I was making more than I was making doing my full-time job.
Nice.
And that was just from putting in full-time hours to dedicatedly sticking at it, doing it, getting back on YouTube. 2015 through 2016, I was posting one every day on YouTube. I set up a thing where it was like, I can't remember what it was, meditation Monday, therapy Tuesday, whatever
Make
it was.
It a journey.
Like, every day I had something going on. And then I had like Friday's my day. So any crap I can think of that I just think, I want to share that and I have nowhere to share it, that's what I do. So that's what this channel, my channel that I currently mainly run was back then. It was every day I'm posting something. That's obviously not sustainable. These weren't short videos. These were sometimes 20, 30, 40-minute videos. Stories might be even longer than that sometimes. So it was a lot of work that I was putting in. So I cut down once I started being successful and my channel was monetized. I was only making single-digit figures every month initially, whereas now it's 4-figure digits, so it's doing much better now. It was something that I suddenly had a path, and I always just think of myself, I'm not charismatic, I'm not particularly good at things in terms of, so I'm not putting myself down here, I'm just saying I'm average. I'm not educated. I don't have any degrees or anything. I don't have any higher education. I barely passed my normal qualifications, let alone anything else. And so I don't have any, I'm not sort of qualification wise particularly up there. I'm not like some YouTubers who are incredibly charismatic and bubbly on screen and all that kind of stuff, and you sort of think, I can see they've got their personality, that's why they're successful. The type of stuff I do doesn't involve me on screen much, and when I am, I'm kind of talking like this, so it doesn't involve me on screen much. So it's not like I've got that relationship, face-to-face kind of relationship quite so much, and yet I make a living doing what I do predominantly from YouTube now. And
that's awesome.
That's just from losing my job, having to make a success, and then putting in all the hours, and I still put in those hours. And I still put in those hours, and being willing and flexible to adapt to what the data says I should be posting about.
Man, I commend you for that. In Race to Suck 21, we similar stories. We're just two best friends decided to best friend. Higher education is a higher education for us is a local band we follow called Higher Education. That's where it stops for us, And I commend the struggle, the cloth that I feel like we're both cut from, and I'm so proud of your channel where it's gotten, and knowing the hustle that's behind it, because I thought, I don't know what I thought with my stories to the nation kind of thing. It's just mainly for kids, only for kids, very niche. I'm like, I don't want to do more than this. And it's tough. Your competition is all over the place.
And it has sprung up. When I started, people would say, "Oh, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to someone talk with a normal voice. I don't want to listen to someone talk relaxed." And yet my thing was, but the background I come from which isn't really on the internet yet, is that this is how
Yeah.
you do it.
Yeah.
And then there became all these people starting to come up, and over recent, like maybe the last year, there's been a whole flood of people. And
So
my
many.
thing is, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. There are channels, obviously, that I feel are doing much better than me, that are much better than me. There are channels that I feel are doing better than me, but I don't feel they are better than me. I just feel they had a lucky break, that probably a video took off for them. And then there are channels that I feel you've got a lot to learn, and maybe I can be helpful to you. And so
Yep.
I try and help other creators, especially in that kind of niche where I think that I'm happy to help. That's why I'm writing or have written the storytelling sort of the book about how to do this sort of stuff, because I want to help other people. I want others to be able, there's enough room for all of us.
Oh yeah.
Enough people have sleep
yeah.
problems and what have you. And I think it's the same with reaction videos, for example. I tried a reaction channel, Aspie Reacts, because I find that I don't react the same as other people to the same content. So someone may watch something and find it emotional, and I'm thinking, I really don't understand why you find that emotional. But then there's something else that I'm bawling my eyes out, and people are like, why are you crying at that? That's it doesn't make sense. So I thought that could be a really interesting, different take on the reaction type of thing. And especially since I lost my best friend in 2020, I've watched a lot more reaction videos because of the fact that one of my favorite things about reaction is, you'll know this because of your age, of growing up in a non-internet era, you play things like the Nintendo 64 sitting next to the person who you're playing GoldenEye with, who you're playing Mario Kart with. You don't do it over the internet where you don't see the person, or where a snotty-nosed 14-year-old shoots you every time you poke your head out of around a corner, and you just never get anywhere with the game. You sit next to your mate, you watch them play a game, they watch you play the game, you enjoy it together. You say to your mate, not the water cooler thing of, oh, did you see this at the weekend? But you say to your mate, your actual friend, oh, you've got to come around and watch this with me. And you want to see them watch what you love. It's not, you don't want to hear, oh, did you watch that program and did you like it? You want to physically watch them, enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's why I watch channels like yours, because I want to see people who I think I could imagine sitting on a sofa with them and watching that with them. When they get to that bit of The Quiet Place, or when they get to, this scene in Bottom, or when they get to, I want to see their reaction. I want to see how they react. I don't want to just hear them tell me about it at work or something. And to me, with my best friend, that's what we did all the time. And that's what I feel maybe is behind a lot of reaction channels taking off, and why I've watched, even though it's only been out a short while, probably about 70 people reacting to the Last of Us TV series. A mix of half of them being people who've played the game, and I want to see what they think of it. So I always watch it first, and then I'll watch them watch it. And half being people who've never played the game.
And just like,
never played the game. So I want to know what a non-game player, someone who's never played this game, thinks when they first see a clicker, or thinks when they first see this happen, or thinks when they get to this part of the story that I know literally breaks you. I want to see someone who doesn't know the story, what they think of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like a weird psychology behind like I didn't know it until I watched. It didn't really click for me. Like, we did the reaction thing for about a year until I was like, what is this? What is the drive? And then I saw someone react to something that I guess at that moment, in a weird mental state that I was in, I hold dear. And I was like, I'm in it with them. And I'm like, okay. Like, it all comes full circle. I'm like, I get this. This. It's not, you're not just watching someone react to something that you personally hold, like, you love, that's beloved to you. You are like, you're reliving that moment again, right where you were. Like, if I was to watch someone react to playing GoldenEye, I would be transported in front of my old ass, like, projection TV with my best friends around playing GoldenEye.
And I think it was, did you play GoldenEye about a year ago on a channel?
No, that would have been
I'm sure some reactor who I watch played it, and I watched it. Was it
King Boomer, maybe?
Yeah, King Boomer played it.
Yeah,
I watched him play that again for the same reason.
I have GoldenEye right there. I have it right there, an N64 cartridge. Yeah, I just don't have the N64.
I've got an N64 as well.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so to me, there's enough room on the internet and there's enough room on YouTube for all of us to be here. Yes, I think it does get a bit saturated and the algorithms do get a bit annoying and they're quite arbitrary, that YouTube claims that they're not and that it's just serving up what people. But I do see certain things suddenly take off that have no real reason why they took off. There's nothing special about their title, thumbnails, nothing different to the competition. That video was just chosen on YouTube's
Randomly.
whim to just give it a punt and see if it works. And if it does, the channel takes off. But I think there's enough room. I think there's, I watch multiple reaction people. I'll watch all of you reacting to, say, I don't know, whatever thing you're reacting to. It doesn't have to be British, but whatever thing. I watch people reacting to films and to music and all sorts of things. But I'll watch people reacting to stuff, and I just think, it's like going and seeing all your friends and sitting down on a sofa with them. And if someone doesn't sort of have a reaction that I think, I can't see myself with them, then I just think I don't watch their channel. It's as simple as that. You don't react with everyone. So there's room for everyone to be there. So if I watch taking Last of Us, I don't know if you've played Last of Us, the game, there's a very emotional moment fairly early on in the game.
Okay.
And if I watch someone playing that game and they're having a good old natter on a Twitch stream and laughing their way through it, and they don't get phased by the emotional moment, I think, no, you're not even engaged in what you're playing.
You're just playing it to play it.
I'm not watching your reaction. But if someone else is like really desperately in it, I don't care whether they like it necessarily or not. I want them to just be in it and involved in the story. If someone's doing that, it's like, I'm going to follow their journey here. I want to see how they're going to react to the next bit and the next bit. So to me, that's like with you and Spencer, it's the same kind of thing, that if I watch you reacting to something, even if you don't get it, like some of the two Ronnies sketches, I want to watch that and think, I'm laughing at them not getting it. You imagine you're sat on a sofa with a friend. Well, you technically are, essentially. You're like, you and Spencer sat there and you watch your friend not get it. That is funny. Watching them not get, especially if you get it, that is funny, watching your friend not get it.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I caught that one. You didn't. All right. Or it takes us a year to actually like get it.
The trouble nowadays is YouTube tells you, your audience will tell you how thick you are.
Yes.
You don't get that. In the 90s, you didn't get that. Your friend just sort of glossed over it. And nowadays, it's like someone's announced it and everyone comes and tells you, oh, you're stupid. You didn't understand that.
And you know what's funny? It's I love that. I love that it has strengthened the need for me to have thick skin. Like, I love that. I think having thick skin is just one of the healthiest freaking things out there. Because in order to have the thickest skin, you got to be able to make fun of yourself. Yeah. And so a lot of stuff that gets said to us, I'm like, I'm already thinking that about myself. Like, I was going to touch on one point before I made that, but I love the fact that there's enough, like you said, there's enough room for all of us. There is no competition. There's only one big community. And the more channels of the more types of things strengthen the community, strengthen the need. And it just makes it more valid of a community. Like the American Reacts, I hate that, but the American Reacts niche.
And again, that comes down to YouTube's algorithms. You've got to call yourself American Reacts because Joe Dan at this end is typing American Reacts to whatever I want to see someone reacting to.
Yep.
Unfortunately, if you don't have that anywhere in the title or description,
won't find it.
It won't get found, or you haven't said it because obviously it now also scans what you're saying. Yes. It won't get found, and you'll just get lost. So you have no choice, even though it sounds cliched, and you don't want to, you just want it to be that it's just us reacting to stuff. It doesn't have to be. Why is the American part the important part? It's frustrating, but it is. It's just the nature of YouTube. But I do agree that community is obviously an important thing. That's why I love what you're doing with the Unplugged podcast. That I've sort of watched through some. I saw you chatting. I haven't watched any of your the brew and
banters. Chat. Yeah, no, that's a different. That goes off on the rails.
But I have watched. So I mentioned I haven't watched that because one of the Unplugged ones I watched. Obviously, you were talking about that, and it was talking about like ghosts and all sorts of other
the cryptids.
yeah, all sorts of different bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, yeah, this is kind of making people aware of multiple different types of things, different types of creators that are out there, different things people do and discuss. Some things you sort of watch and you think, oh, actually, this is interesting, and that fascinates me. And other things you watch and think, yeah, I'm not so interested in that. Like any good podcast, like I don't. Joe Rogan's not on YouTube really now in terms of podcast, but because of the Spotify thing. But when he was on YouTube, some I would really resonate with and want to watch, and others it's like, no, I definitely don't agree with or want or have any interest in who you're interviewing, what you're chatting about in that podcast.
Yep.
And they would be incredibly different, and he would have to keep a straight face and, you know, I don't say it in a negative way, but like his composure, regardless of what the opinion is, whether it's something that he thinks, you're sort of way off the mark there, you're a bit out there, or whether he thinks I 100% agree with you, whether that comes down to political views in terms of Joe Rogan, whether it comes down to political views of his versus the person he's talking to that could be on any end of the spectrum, whether it comes down to beliefs in terms of therapeutic beliefs, whether it's you must analyze, you know, your deepest, darkest parts of your childhood versus you must never go back to your deepest parts of your childhood and just stick to a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, or whatever the topic is, where there's a range of differences. He has to just chat and ask questions and let the person do their bit of talking and let viewers decide, oh, I'll watch this one because this is actually interesting, or I won't because this actually I don't agree with them, don't agree with their opinion, so I'm not going to even watch it.
And that's my biggest thing is like, I feel like the more plugged in we get, the more we lose that just learning how to talk and how to just engage with others. Engagement. Like, you don't have to be part of the same, like, you don't have to come from the same place I do. In fact, I'm glad that you don't. I'm glad that you're killing it somewhere else. That way it drives interesting discourse. Like,
and I've always said that in relation to, obviously, therapy. I want to engage with people, not quite so much nowadays because I do more stuff with like YouTube and storytelling than therapy. So I don't necessarily want to spend all my time talking about different forms of therapy. But when that was my main focus, I would want to hear conflicting views to mine. Like, why do you think that? What's your reasons for that? You know, I'm a very kind of scientific minded person, a logical person. So it's like, what's your evidence for that? Or what's leading you to say that that's your perspective? Because there are times, for example, I wrote a hypnotherapy book in 2019, I think, where I essentially wouldn't say anything in the book unless I could find a source for it, because I was aware that I've grown up learning hypnosis since being 14. I've picked up all this knowledge, some of which could be complete bollocks. Some of it is going to be complete rubbish that I've learned and been taught as fact from trainers without ever questioning it, because I've just taught it. It's, you know, they're a trainer, they're teaching me. Why would I question it? So in my own book, I decided, if I make anything that's a claim, either if I say it as an opinion piece, so, you know, in my opinion or in my experience, this has been the case, then I'll say that in that way. But if it's something where I say this is the case, like this is what hypnosis is, if I can't find a reference for it, even if I believe it at that point, if I can't find a reference for it when researching, I ditch it from the book. Because to me, it's like, I'm not going to say something if I couldn't find the source in today's world when I've got access to the internet. If I can't find any source for that bit of information that's legitimate, that's not just cyclical, you know, so and so said it on that video, and so and so said it because that person said it, you know, if it's not that, I just wouldn't include it. And, you know, myself and my best friend, we growing up, I met him when he was 14 and I was 18, I think. So for quite a number of years, we were best friends. And he's a very emotional person, and I was a very logical person. His middle name was Kirk, and he always referred to me as Spock. So obviously, we sort of fit. But we were fascinated by things, as I still am. So we were fascinated by ghosts, and so we did things like we heard about electric voice phenomena. So we thought, there's one to test. Big cemetery in the middle of town. So midnight, big cemetery. Take my dictaphone, sit down under a tree, right in the middle of the cemetery, holding the dictaphone, headphone in each ear, so one in my ear and one in his ear, press the button, listening to what the dictaphone's recording, completely crapped ourselves because we heard voices on the dictaphone. And we decided we are never, ever doing that again. We both obviously had the opinion of, I know logically it's pareidolia. It's like I'm hearing voices because I'm expecting to hear voices. But when you're sitting at midnight in a cemetery and all you can hear is voices surrounding you, whispering and mumbling things, and you're thinking, this is actually now scary. So we experimented with astral travel and tried that out because we thought, if people are making these claims, let's try it. We did things like anything hypnotic. So he wanted to know when he was like 16 what it's like to grow up and be an adult and grow all the way up to the end of his life. So I said, okay, I'll hypnotize you. And in a 5-minute period, you can experience a whole lifetime. I'll go and put the kettle on and make a cup of tea for us. And then I'll come back and we'll talk about it. And he experienced birth all the way to death in a 5-minute period. And we sat down for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours talking about this life he'd experienced, what it was like to grow up and have kids and watch his kids grow up and watch his kids get married and then watch, have himself getting old and, have grandkids.
That's some growing up real quick.
So we did things like that. We did things like exploring past life regression, and we sort of went there and had some brilliant past life regressions. We did future progression, which got very freaky because it was 100% accurate. And if I hadn't done it, it wouldn't have happened. So he said for his future progression, I just randomly picked a date, just in the future, randomly picked a date, wrote down a date, videoed sort of everything back then, picked a date, wrote it down, and then said to him, what's the time? And he then looked at a clock. So in his mind, he then said, I'll look at the clock. He looked at the clock. He told me the time. I asked him what he was doing. He said, I'm watching this TV program called Des and Mel, which was a daytime show that had just started with Des O'Connor as one of the hosts of it. And he said, I said, what else are you doing? He said, I've just printed off a load of stuff from my printer. He said, I can't hear anything. So there was no audio to his experience. He said, and I've just dropped the stuff for some reason. Something startled me. And he dropped the paperwork. I had all this recorded. Months later, I put this in my diary. I phoned him up to say, just seeing what you're up to. He said, you just scared the crap out of me. I've just dropped some paperwork I printed off on the printer. And he was watching Des and Mel. And he worked shifts that he worked in a holiday camp where I worked. And we worked shift patterns. You didn't know on the Monday, you found out what shifts you're working for the whole week. So
he couldn't have known.
So there's no way. He had no control over what shift pattern he'd be doing or anything. Wow. And if I hadn't hypnotized him and asked him what he was doing, I wouldn't have phoned him and startled him, making him drop the paperwork in that future situation. So, we did things like that. That's kind of really freaky. And we just literally, we read an article about how you can vaporize alcohol and breathe the alcohol in, and it gets you drunk quickly, but it doesn't give you any hangover. And it then said, here's a vaporizer that you can buy, the only one on the market. It costs £1,500. So I said to my best friend, I've got one of those water machines at home, water fountain thing that has a little vaporizer bit in it. If I take it to pieces, I said, if I take it to pieces, maybe we can make our own. So obviously that's what we did. We got a teapot because we're British. We got a clear teapot. We put my nice vaporize a bit of my water feature that I'd completely ripped to pieces into the teapot, and it had fancy lights on it. So we had this psychedelic kind of alcohol machine that we end up with. We then got a Bic biro, took the ends off, stuffed it into the nozzle of the teapot, taped everything up, filled it with Scotch whiskey, flicked it on at the mains, watched it turn to a nice white mist inside the teapot that was glowing in all the different colors that were pulsating inside this teapot. And then obviously just took turns to inhale this alcohol. I thought, this cost us like £8. Big difference to $1,500.
And did it work?
We made this out. So it worked perfectly fine. So you don't get any of the kick that you get with like whiskey or anything doing it this way, just breathing it in. But we would just try anything. We just sort of
Well, I mean, it's good to have that balance, man. I'm very happy that you had that the Bonnie and Clyde, the ride or die. Like you had the other half, and it's just it's funny how we attract the other halves, not just as a let's say intimate partners, but just people you surround yourself with. You know, like I keep telling this to everyone on Embrace the Suck 21. Spencer and I are completely different, 100% different. You know, like he's artist in his fields. I'm old military man. Like I don't, but we're friends. Our one common love is music, and we built a friendship off of music, and that's where the whole thing. We have that discourse between us, and we couldn't be more opposite. But we can still talk about it, and that's something I saw, and it's like if I can talk to one of my best friends about whatever, knowing where he's coming from, and we can actually have a conversation. I feel like right now, people that are like that question your thoughts or beliefs, they they people take that as a form of attacking you, but it's not. A question that's posed correctly can be used to either solidify your stance or make you ask your own questions as well, which is what gaining knowledge and experience is all about. And I feel like people have become just less open to letting their guard down. Like people are just so quick to be militant. And that's going back to your stories. It's like they can't relax. People can't chill out. And people that hate on stories that are fantastical and meant to take you there, their wall is already up before they go in. So for them, they're hearing about a horse that took mushrooms, but it's more than that. It's a the story is a vessel for you to unplug and just go with the flow. It's not supposed to hold up in a court of law. You know, there's no yearly test on the subject matter. You
And I
know,
think obviously the sort of point I was making is that I just love obviously what you're doing in terms of there's such variety of topics that you'll end up talking to people about that could range from, as I've just mentioned, weird stuff from me. I can go into UFOs and all sorts of things.
we're gonna have you back on.
Yeah.
I want to have you back on. We'll have those conversations.
But there's lots of weird stuff. But I get because that's not my focus in terms of like people don't interview me about those sort of things. That's not what someone says. You do that YouTube channel, so I want to interview you about that. Or I'm giving talks at a hypnotherapy conference in November. That's because it's about hypnotherapy. So people don't talk to me about these things, but that doesn't mean that I don't get enjoyment from saying, oh, I can subscribe to this channel, and on this channel, I can watch people talk about these very different subjects that I have interests in.
Yeah.
Because I've got experiences in those or whatever it happens to be. I'm just curious about the topics or whatever, even if it's not my main focus in terms of what anyone would ever talk to me about. I'm a human being like everyone else.
Yeah.
You're known for your reaction videos predominantly, on YouTube at least. So in the wider world, not your social circle or whatever. But that's not who you are.
No.
There's so much more to you that you would then find other things like, oh, I love watching this person's things and I love watching that person's things.
Yep.
And so you want someone that says, look, I'll give you a taste of all these different people. And if you like them, subscribe to them, check them out, learn more about them. If you don't, that's fine. Move on to the next one, because I may be interviewing someone who talks about something really interesting that you do like next time.
Yep. I just facilitate like that's and that's another thing. Like I hate saying like interview, like a podcast interview. Like I hate that because you get asked the same questions over and over and over and over again. And I just want this to be a place where we just talk about whatever. We can talk about why refrigerant is a good chemical or bad compound to have in refrigerators. Like who knows? You know what I mean? I don't care. I just want to have a place where you can unplug as a guest on the channel as well. Because I learned this on my second, I guess you would call it a podcast, interviewing a band member, a local band member, and I'm like, he gets asked the same questions all the time. He's ready with those answers. This is not a unique experience for him. What makes it unique? Like, well, let's find out about you. Like, forget the band. Let's talk about you. Like, who the hell are you? Kind of thing. And I love that. I love that because of this talk, people can find out your connections, how deeply rooted you are into your
mm,
work, and where you come from with your best friend, and how significant
mm,
your best friend's role was in your life, and how
mm.
you've developed, and how you've, I
And
guess,
I saw
fulfilled that.
recently saw an interview. Just I think it was I don't know when it was posted, but I only saw it a few weeks ago with Graham Norton, where he was talking about his role as an interviewer. He was being interviewed, so he was asked, "How do you feel being on the other side, being the one being interviewed?" And he said, "Growing up, I always wanted to be the celebrity on the couch. I always, oh, that'll be me one day, the celebrity on the couch being interviewed by these top interviewers. As an adult, I realized that the easier and better job is to be the interviewer because you get to do it over and over again, listening to lots of people's stories and interacting with lots of different people night after night or whatever it happens to be. If you're the person being interviewed, you pretty much get asked the same questions by every interviewer over
Oh,
and over again about whatever you have to plug at that point in time, but you do it infrequently enough that you always feel a bit anxious about it in most cases
yeah.
because you're not doing it very often. And so it's like, right, I've got to make sure I say about that book or about that film or about that whatever it is, and I've got to make sure I say this, and I've got to make sure I don't say those things, and I've got to make sure that when I talk about that film, that these bits that are secret, that I definitely don't
Oh,
accidentally say those bits.
yeah.
And so they're constantly on edge and anxious. And yeah, he was sort of saying, I now know I'm on the easier side of it by being the interviewer because these people, it's repetitive to them normally. He said, because the follow up thing was, yeah, but on your show, it's not. On your show, the stories people tell, you don't get on most other shows.
No, his show is different. His
Yeah,
show is like at least top two out there. I
yeah.
don't know who number two is, but I have to reserve another one out there. But
But
he's top
his
two.
thing was part of it's competition. If the celebrity next to you has just told a story that gives them the limelight, you're gonna talk about your hemorrhoids
Yep.
because even though you would never do
Yeah.
it ever, you're gonna do it because Tom Cruise has just spoken about something that you've got to outdo now, whatever it is.
Yep.
Yeah. So he says that's why I can get such good. I have them all on the sofa. I can get such good stories because when one does something, the next one wants to top it. And also, it kind of gives it like, well, they were okay to do that, so it can't be that bad
Yeah.
saying something like that. But then
It's
it makes more
never.
entertaining TV for everyone because
Yeah.
you're getting things that are nothing to do with what the person's there to plug. It's
I-
actually, in most other interviews, it's so and so here has just written a new book. They sit down. What inspired you to write this new book? How long did it take you to write this
I,
new book?
yeah.
Tell
I
me that
can't watch
fascinating
those.
story from this new book.
I can't
And
watch those.
it's dry and it doesn't go anywhere. But so yeah, it sort of made me think of that interview. What we're talking
Yeah.
about here, the Graham
And
Norton interview.
that's what I'm trying to carve
Mm,
out. It's like I've been struggling, with the YouTube thing, is like
mm,
finding my own voice on that. Finding my own voice. I'm not just embracing Suck 21, but we're doing our own thing.
mm,
And
mm,
this is where my heart is. This is my heart thing. Just having real conversations with real people that like I'm already anything you need ever, man. Just come to me. I got you because we are of the same
mm,
hustle grind. Stick with it. Just stick with it. Just we're I always feel like I don't belong where I'm at
mm, mm,
because I'm just an average dude. You'll see me at the store probably with a ripped grocery bag because I forgot to double bag it, or
mm,
I was too quick, and that stuff happens to me on the daily,
mm, mm.
or I'll slip falling getting into my car. Like I'm that guy. I'm that guy. You're like, oh God, okay. You know,
Whenever I fall over, I always think, I hope someone had a camera.
yeah. I try to
As
make a
long as I'm not
spectacle.
injured, I always think, I hope someone had a camera. That would be a funny moment. I've just fallen over on ice. Someone had better have caught that to make it worthwhile me falling over. If I'd
Yeah,
hurt myself, someone better have recorded it.
yeah, you just have to make it above and beyond.
Yeah.
Just make it big. Make your slip ups big. Make it funny because I love my ethos is putting the awkward in their corner.
Mm,
How dare you make it awkward for me? I want to make it so awkward that you're going to be
mm,
uncomfortable. Like when I'm yawning and people looking at me, I look right at them,
mm.
like full eye contact. Now it's weird for everyone, not just me. But
And I just think the biggest thing, obviously, as we just sort of mentioned, is that grind. I think if anyone wants to make it on YouTube or anything like this, I don't see it as pessimistic when I say that I expect the worst as my benchmark bar for what I'm trying to aim for. I see that as being realistic and thinking, you know what, why should? So I saw, I think vidIQ did a thing where they said in one of their recent videos that something like 99% of all YouTubers don't make it to, I think it was 100 subscribers or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
And so if you even make it there, you are already better than 99% of people who start a channel. So it's like, my bar should be there, because if 99% of people fail to hit that bar, well, then that means I'm in the top 1% by hitting it.
Yeah.
So why is my bar saying 100,000 subscribers is my bar?
Yeah.
When I'm just starting out, my bar should be, for now, can I just at least get a person to watch my video? Can I just at least make that now that someone comes back to my second video?
That's what it is. And I tell Spencer this. It's like the Embrace Suck thing is a different channel. It's a different, we're attaining something different on that channel than I'm on this one, and Spencer's on his own channel, right? If I can walk away from this channel from a day of allowing someone to have a step away from their grind, just a moment, just like what you do with your stories, like, hey, it's a break from the grind. You can put all that stuff, all the chaos that's happening in the real world right now around you, if you can just take them away from that world that they live in for just a little bit, that is enough of a breath of a fresh air or a breather, just to regroup, and you can hit your day or your night stronger. You know, that's I feel like that's the goal, and we're there for them, you know, and they just come out and subscribe to us because they're part of the community. You know, it's about community, and that's what I tell people.
And talk about that, giving people that break. That was kind of where I started with online downloadable content. Back with this, having this friend who worked for a mobile phone company and introduced me to the idea that people could actually download to their mobile phones to listen to things like songs and audio on their phones. I started creating 5-minute meditations with the idea that parents pick their kids up from school. Parents are stressed from work and they're about to have kids get in their car.
Yes.
And the kids aren't going to say, hello, mummy and daddy. I'm incredibly pleased that you come to pick me up. I will sit quietly in the back seat now. Feel free to put the music on that you'd like. Feel free to have a nice, relaxing drive home, because I know you've had a really tough day of it. And I'll behave when I get home as well and sit down calmly and quietly while you prepare dinner. Kids don't do that. They seem to have a mind of their own. So I thought, let's create these tracks that are literally 5 minutes with the ethos of pull up down the road from the school, put a track on while you're in the car, shut your eyes, chill out for 5 minutes to this thing. This will take you, if I described it as, say your stress levels are 0 to 10, you are currently 9 out of 10 on stress because of work and driving to the school. And when your child gets in the car, if they make you 1 notch more stressed, you're 10 out of 10. You're blowing your top. So if I can have you listen to something that gets you from that 9 out of 10 down to a 3 out of 10, then if your child gets you up 3 points more stressed, you're still only halfway stressed. So that was my logic, was, look, it's a 5-minute thing. Just shove it on your stereo in your car or whatever, or on your mobile phone or whatever. That's just come out where you could have mobile phones with being able to listen to music and stuff. So it was 5 minutes. Partly it was like, I don't know, 28 kilobyte per second kind of level, so that it could be downloaded under 3 megabytes and all that sort of stuff. But the idea was, it's only a vocal, so it's not too bad. But the idea was, it's just something that, I'll churn out loads of these every day. I'll churn out new ones. So I had hundreds of them. And it was just, it's only 5 minutes, but 5 minutes of deep relaxation, listening to a meditation, a kind of meditative story, whether it's about being a caterpillar that turns into a butterfly, or about sitting and chilling out in a tree, watching the clouds go by, or whatever story it turns out to be. They were just like 5-minute things. It's enough to, which your children's stories could probably serve the same kind of purpose for adults who want that de-stress moment, is something that separates one part of your day and the stresses that went with that from the other part of your day. So that you can then do the other part of your day, giving your kids the best parenting care, because you're not as stressed. If you're like, no, just get in the car, shut up, don't do that. how are they supposed to react? If you're being like that with them, how are they going to react back to you? If you're that disrespectful to them, you're not doing it on
exactly.
purpose. You're not a bad parent. You're doing it because you're a human. And so it was just, that's kind of where my journey started, like 2002-ish, with doing that kind of product for free. I just gave them away. I didn't.
Well, you put what that does is it puts a divider in the day. It stops becoming the work day when you hear that. It's like, now I am forced to regroup and restart. That way the day doesn't just, it gets compartmentalized, and you can compartmentalize your stress into that. It's like the ending of the work day with this little clip, this 5-minute breather. That means this is here, and now we can move forward. You know, and it helps for me organizing that, because there's a lot of times, because I'm doing YouTube full time, like the days, my schedule, it all just freaking, it's a mess, and I'm trying to carve my way in between my days to make it work. And these stepaways that I find on YouTube or through your channel, and just these stepaways help with sanity and help me become stronger as just getting through my day. I'm not trying to get through my year. I'm not listening to a video to get all the way to next January. No, I'm looking for a 12-hour run. Let's see how I can do 12 hours. And then let's go 15 hours, 16 hours. That's, you know, but it's required. It's required as humans. You got to learn. And my ethos on the channel is unplug and go do something epic or legendary. That's, you know, it's very important to unplug, because life is so busy. And if you're always in that rat race, if you don't allow yourself to step away for your own mental health, it's going to be very detrimental to you in the long run. It'll catch up to you. No matter how fast you run, it compounds itself until it finds you and it becomes something you can't beat.
And when you're doing things like this, your brain is constantly trying to, because we do unfortunately have a certain level of our mind focused on things like the algorithm.
Yep.
Can we get the thumbnail? How do we have to do the thumbnail? What's the competition doing the thumbnail? I don't think of it as, I'm not talking about competition in terms of real competition, in terms of YouTube's view of these things.
Yes.
What's everyone else doing? Like, if your branding is very different to everyone else, is that going to be a good thing, or is it detrimental? Because the reason everyone's doing something that they're doing that's consistent with all of them is because, like, if I started doing bright yellow thumbnails or something, is that going to be detrimental to me? You know, no one else does bright yellow thumbnails. It will stand out, but is it relaxing? Does it imply relaxation? So you have to think of all these things, but it means that you are constantly going through your day, not only when you're filming in front of a camera and when you're maybe writing down some notes and things, but you're thinking of ideas and new ideas and things that, and you, if you're anything like me, you have massive lists of lots of ideas of things you'd love to do, knowing there isn't actually the time to do them in the timescale you would like to have them achieved in, because you'd love to do them, but you want them all ready to be complete.
Yep.
It's like, I'd love to do all these things. I wish they were already done so that I had the end result without doing it, because it's a lot of work. And so you do need those almost forced. I know YouTube announces regularly, you know, creators should take breaks and all these things. But if you disappear for a couple of weeks because of YouTube's thing of recency, and you know, your viewers didn't watch you last week because you didn't post, they watched X person instead. YouTube only cares about eyes on their platform. So they now, even if they've told you it's okay to take a break, it's fine, it won't negatively impact you. It does, because I've tried it. It takes a long time to gradually get yourself back into the algorithm again, where viewers are watching it enough to make it so they share it to the people that are outside of those main viewers. And to help more eyes take it up, because they want, you know, that person posts all the time. That means they keep eyes on our platform all the time. So keep showing them to people to get more of it. So 100%. We know that even if they tell us you shouldn't make, you know, you've got to look after your mental health. We know that. And so part of it, and this is kind of what I talk with people who want to do this kind of stuff or other creators, is you have to figure out how you can look after yourself within that framework, that a part of you is always driven by, but if I don't do it, I must do it. And that kind of mindset, and that's not healthy. in any, not healthy in any walk of life, where it's like, I must
No.
do that, I have to do that. You don't want that. So you have to kind of learn what's going to be your thing that takes you away from this, gives you a break. How can you be consistent and plan things, but you have to look after yourself, but you have to kind of
Be
I think
smart.
it is tough doing this when you get to the full-time level. Or if you want to be full-time. So if it's just a hobby, if I was doing it just for fun like I used to,
have fun.
I could put in 30 or 40 hours a week one week because I'm choosing to, and I can put in no hours a week because I'm choosing to. But if I'm doing it where my income's on the line, I have to do what makes the income. So I have to do planned stuff, make sure I'm planning for breaks and things, and you have to kind of learn all this. No one teaches you this stuff, but it makes it very hard to then do your other projects that you might want to do.
100%, 100%. Because if you had like a million, talking about 1 million, 2 million, then you can get away with, let's say, one upload a week, because now they look to you as a business, as like, okay, this guy's making us money, we're not going to overcrowd him. A channel that's 100,000, a million or less than 1 million, right, takes a week off, might as well be a month. Might as well be a month. You're going to see the effect that step away is going to have on your channel, whereas bigger channels can take a week to upload. And that's why the bigger channels, if you go to them, they upload once a week, once every 2 weeks, maybe, I don't think once a month. I've never seen once a month, but at least once a week. But the quality is there because they have all that time to make that content.
And they can often hire teams of people to do the bits they don't want to do. Like, to make my stuff, I have to come up with the idea, which luckily I used to do it through live streams predominantly. Nearly all my audience is American, so I would do live streams late at night in the UK because then it would be closer to the bedtime for Americans.
But your audience is all American?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
I'd say about 90% of my audience is American, predominantly California. Second is New York. Third is Texas.
Oh, you got the big three.
Which makes it also very awkward from a time zone perspective. Because it's not like I could, because they're relatively close. So it's not like I can easily just say, oh, I'll do it for a Californian time zone. That's fine. Do it, because then it's wrong for the other two. Because that's quite a wide space.
It is.
But yeah, so most of my audience is American. So I was doing my live streams late at night, often finishing way after midnight. My streams would nearly always be like 3-4 hours long, including the sleep story in there. But I would need a bit of settling in time. I've sort of just getting in front of the camera, making sure everything's working okay. And so I just want a bit of a chat, give audience time to come on the stream and ask me questions. And people have got questions, and me being live is the only time they can ask it face to face. So I'd be answering questions, and then I would do the story, and I would end the stream with the story. So as soon as I'd say something like, and they drift peacefully and comfortably asleep, I would then hang up the stream and end it at that point. And then in the chat, say, thank you for joining me and whatever, typing it into the chat, so that anyone who fell asleep to the stream, I don't say, well, I hope you loved that story. And then jolt everyone awake again.
Jolt everyone awake.
So I would end the stream with the story ending.
Smooth.
But I'd get any other bits before that. But to make my stories, I need some way of coming up with the idea. Before I did that, I used to try and literally come up with a new idea every time.
Wow.
And that was so difficult. What is the story I'm going to create now from scratch? No AI or anything. What's the story I'm going to create now from scratch? And that was really hard to do when I was now doing it full time. When I was doing it just, I've got an idea for a story, so I'll churn one out. That was easy. But when it's, you've got to do another one today, you've got to do another one today, you've got to do another one today, that's when it became difficult. So I have to come up with the story, record the story, edit the audio recording, editing out excessive breathing and other bits and pieces. I'm always working on different tricks to be able to do that. Like for breathing, I let my stomach slump so that when I breathe, I don't sort of go where it's more audible. Like, and you can barely
Wow.
hear it. I've let my stomach muscles totally relax while I'm talking. So I let my shoulder slumps and my stomach muscles totally relax so that my breathing's less audible, because then it's less to edit out when I get to the editing stage. Then I've
Yes.
got to obviously edit the audio. Then I've got to turn that audio in some kind of video, which if it's a black screen video, which a lot of people quite like, then that's quite easy because you just drop the audio into the video bit, have your intro bit, but then the rest of it's a black screen. Not too much difficulty with the video editing. If it's an image or some graphics on screen, then I've got to figure out what graphics are going to go with it.
Yeah.
How long of the video, how do I have it changing regularly? Do I have it the same? What am I going to do with it? So I have to think about all of those sort
That's
of
tough.
things.
That's
If I have sound effects, I've got to
immersive.
think, I've done some stories where I've literally got sound effects for everything. So, the horse walks
Wow.
past. Well, that means I've got to find the sound of horses. The dragon's
How loud
breathing. Well, that means I've got to find the sound of a dragon breathing. The dragon's flapping its wings. I've got to find the sound of a dragon flapping its wings or create the sound. And you've got to be I know how to do everything kind of person.
Yeah.
And so to do that kind of story used to take me about 40 to 50 hours to make a 30-minute story for YouTube, which isn't sustainable for a weekly thing. And so I had to kind of find different processes. But yeah, you have to kind of do this. You have to, if you've got a team, if you're a big enough channel and you've got a team, so you can outsource. You can say, I'll do the recording of the story.
You find
do
the sounds.
Your team do the editing of the audio, do the sound effects, do the all the sound design, do everything else. That's fine. I know creators who do that, who literally just they record a bunch of stories in a day, outsource them, and then receive back the ready-made videos.
Yeah.
I don't have the luxury.
No, that's a lot of overhead. That's a lot of overhead.
Yeah, it is.
That you have to
so I have to do it obviously all myself,
Yep.
which is fine. But it does mean it is a very, very busy thing. And when you're running multiple channels like you are, you've got multiple different types. Like, how am I going to present the podcast? How am I going to present my children's stories? That you've got to create all these things as well, and you've got to reach out to creators and arrange meetings, and it becomes a lot of work that you have to think of. And then you've got to think of yourself and how you look after your own mental health within all that.
Yep. And at the same time, juggle being a husband, father, and dealing with the puppy. So it's like all this stuff that you have to make work. And then you emerge from this space and you have to be 100%.
But then when you sort of think, I've got an idea for something I want to create. So say you came up with the idea of, you know what, actually our channel's reaching 100,000 subscribers. I think that gives us a bit of credibility as a reaction channel. There's not too many reaction channels that have passed the 100,000 mark doing something like that. I want to write a book about how you do reaction channels, how you navigate things like the copyright systems, the strengths and the weaknesses in that, how much sort of alterations you have to make to things, and what kind of process, because often people get into their kind of process of what works for them at some later point. They've been trying and battling and constantly apologizing to viewers for months or years. And then eventually they hit on something that's kind of like, actually, this works for me. This gets most of the stuff through copyright if I do it like this. So that's the sort of stuff that you want to teach new people. So if you had an idea of, I want to write that book, there isn't a book teaching that. I want to write that book, just a short 120-page book, something that'd be big enough for a physical copy and
more of a manual. Of a manual.
But yeah, you want to write it. So you think, how do I squeeze in the time to do this? I'm not a writer. I'm not good at all this stuff. I don't know how to do that. So suddenly you have to think, I've got to do all the stuff I've got to do to make the living, and I want to do this. Like, obviously I wrote the children's book, 33 children's stories. It's a pretty hefty book. And I had to find time to squeeze in doing that. And I binge things. So I literally would think, right, I'm going to do that over this many days, from when I wake up through to when I fall asleep, day after day, until it's done. Because that way it takes a lot of hours, but it's in a short space of time. So it hopefully doesn't impact on everything else too much. And I don't get too stressed, because it's like, no, because once this is done, I'm back to my normal grind. The same with, that's obviously another one that I've recently created based on my most popular sleep stories series. But it's stuff that's like, you just you find ways of squeezing these things in. You don't have more hours than anyone else.
No,
You just
I
have to
wish.
make that commitment and decision.
I wish the days were 48 hours. You know, it's just I just run out of them.
Mm.
I start just like everyone else does, but it feels like my days end before everyone else does. It's just like, what happened? What happened?
But
And
one
it's
problem I've got with being autistic, it seems to be a side effect with me, is that time vanishes for me. That I can look down at a pad, look up, and 3 hours have gone.
wow,
Where did they go? How did that happen? And it is
wow.
literally as extreme as that. I can go in the bath and my wife will say, "Is the water not cold?" I don't know. Why'd you say that? And I haven't really noticed that, it's my body temperature now. I haven't really noticed. Is that because you've been in here for like 3 or 4 hours?
You're like, what?
I just got in. What do you mean I've been in here 3 or 4 hours? And literally,
Wow,
I go off in
man.
my brain or I get so absorbed in something I'm doing that hours disappear. I can say to my wife, I'll be in bed in a minute, and it'll be 3 a.m, and I'd said that at like 10.
It's like one
And
hell of a minute.
yeah, and I've just noticed it's 3 a.m,
Wow.
and I've just looked up. So yeah, it's
No, I
time
got you, man.
vanishes. It's horrible.
And you know, I before and I know we've been on a minute. I know we've been on a while, and we'll wrap it
That'll be
up
my fault
here.
as well.
No, 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 no. And listen, you're always, the first podcast, right? The first podcast I bring people on, this is more of I get to know you, get to
Mm.
know who we are, all of the people that are listening and watch this, get to know you. Next time you're on, we'll talk about something completely different. Something that'll just, what you would, out of your comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, and we'll just have fun with it. Because I think we have that like-mindedness where we could just ramble on something super interesting. Because I know your thoughts about pyramids. I know you have to have your own thoughts, and I
Mm-hmm.
know we could spend a weekend just talking about that. But you know, uh, all of the links to where our listeners, our subscribers can follow you will be in the description of the video. Links to purchase those books that you've written, I'll put those in the descriptions as well. So, you know, I really appreciate your time. I know you are a very busy person. I really do know that, and I really appreciate every minute you give. Time is precious. So, thank you for coming on to the podcast, man, and thank you for being a friend of the channel.
Thank you for having me
you
on.
know and for all of you guys listening, make sure you check out Dan Jones. And just go ahead and go click crazy with all the links in the description of this video. All right, and once again, guys, thank you for joining us here on the Unplugged Nation podcast, and make sure you unplug and you do something legendary, and I'll see you in the next podcast, guys. All right, later.